You know, when we humans were essentially designing the modern golden retriever, we made some very specific choices.
Oh, absolutely. Very intentional
Yeah,
choices.
like we gave them that beautiful golden coat, that incredibly friendly demeanor, and of course those signature adorable floppy ears.
Right, the classic golden look.
But biologically speaking, by giving them those ears, we essentially strapped two humid, poorly ventilated biological greenhouses to the sides of their heads.
Yeah, it really is the ultimate irony of breed aesthetics. I mean, we bred for this very specific, lovable look, and in doing so, we inadvertently created the perfect microclimate for yeast and bacteria to thrive.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a massive stack of veterinary insights, specifically focusing on the health and biology of golden retrievers, and, well, we're boiling it all down for you.
Exactly, getting right to the core of it.
But I want to be clear about our mission right out of the gate. Because if you type dog health problems into a search engine, you are instantly buried under this avalanche of worst-case scenarios and pure, unfiltered info overload.
It's terrifying.
Wait, so this is not an exercise in anxiety today?
No, far from it. We aren't here to read off some scary medical list that just leaves you feeling completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
The goal today is to strip away that panic by looking at the actual biological mechanics. We want to look at the why and the how of breed-specific medicine.
So whether you are a prospective owner dreaming of a puppy, a current pet parent who just wants to do the absolute best for your dog, or, you're just someone who loves understanding how animals work, we are here to give you a shortcut.
A very practical shortcut, hopefully.
We're going to build a framework so you can be a highly informed, proactive, and empowered advocate for your dog's health.
And that really starts with understanding the mechanisms. It's one thing to know what might happen to a dog. It's entirely another to understand the biological reality behind it.
Right, the actual science of it.
Because once you understand the how and the why, the fear just kind of dissipates. You stop worrying and you start strategizing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we even touch on a single specific ailment or joint issue, there is a foundational concept we have to get straight.
Okay, where are we starting?
We need to completely reframe how we think about the genetic dice roll. I want to talk about this idea of predisposition, because it really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about today.
I am so glad you brought that up. It is arguably the most important concept in veterinary medicine.
Right.
When we say a golden retriever has a genetic predisposition to a condition, it simply means they have a statistically increased likelihood of developing it compared to the general dog population.
Just a statistical bump.
That's it. It is a statistical probability rooted in their DNA. It is not a crystal ball.
But the key here, and this is what I found so reassuring, is that an increased likelihood absolutely does not mean certainty. It doesn't mean every single golden retriever is destined to get these conditions.
Not at all.
When I was going through the literature, it made me think of like a weather forecast. If you choose to live in a coastal city, you have a much higher likelihood of facing a hurricane compared to someone living in the desert.
Oh, I love that. What's fascinating here is how perfectly that analogy maps to genetics.
The blueprint of your city is prone to storms, but doesn't mean a hurricane hits your house every single day or even every year.
Exactly.
It just means you don't build a flimsy roof. You know exactly where your prep kit is, you check the radar, and you prioritize your seasonal preparations. You don't live in terror of the sky, you just live prepared.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that simple mindset shift changes your entire relationship with your pet.
How so?
Well, when you understand that predisposition is just a forecast, it transforms your role as an owner. You move out of a state of passive anxiety where you were just sitting around waiting for the inevitable, worst possible health crisis to strike.
Right, just bracing for impact.
Exactly. And you move into a state of active observation.
You're just keeping an eye on the radar.
Precisely. You know what the early signs look like. You know what specific screenings to ask your vet for. You are making informed decisions rather than reactive ones.
So with that coastal weather map in our heads, let's look at the actual structural framework of the golden retriever.
Yeah.
The muscular and skeletal system.
The chassis, so to speak.
Yeah. Specifically, we're looking at hip dysplasia and elbow dysplasia.
Ah, yes. These are incredibly common topics of conversation when it comes to larger breeds.
So what's actually happening there mechanically?
At a mechanical level, dysplasia is a condition where the joint, either the hip or the elbow, simply doesn't develop correctly. The joint doesn't fit together as smoothly as it should.
The structural blueprints just had a quirk.
Exactly. Picture the hip joint. It's a ball and socket. In a perfectly healthy dog, that ball glides effortlessly inside the socket.
Super smooth.
Right. But with dysplasia, they might be misshapen or maybe sit too loosely. So instead of gliding smoothly, they grind or they rattle. And over time, that friction degrades the cartilage, which causes inflammation, pain, and eventually arthritis.
And because golden retrievers have a genetic predisposition toward this structural quirk, that active observation we just talked about is critical.
Hmm.
We aren't just looking for a dog that is completely immobilized, right?
Yeah, well, by that point, it's very advanced. We are looking for subtle, persistent changes in how they move.
Right. You're watching for noticeable limping, sure, but also the quieter signs. Think about how your dog gets out of their bed in the morning. Is it one fluid, bouncy motion?
Right, or are they doing that slow front legs first stretch while their back end kind of hesitates?
Are they suddenly reluctant to jump into the back of the car or maybe taking the stairs a little slower than they used to?
Those are the exact radar pings you're looking for.
But here's a major point of confusion for me, and I want to push back on something here.
Okay, go for it.
The veterinary insights heavily emphasize obesity in the exact same breath as joint dysplasia. Wait, if dysplasia is a genetic structural issue, meaning the dog was literally born with a ball and socket that don't fit together perfectly, why are we focusing so excessively on their everyday diet and weight?
Because it is the single most important variable you can control.
Really?
Diet.
Yes. You cannot go into your dog's DNA and rewrite the genetic makeup of how their hip joint developed. That is completely out of your hands. But obesity. Obesity is the ultimate preventable multiplier.
Okay, to me, it feels like saying, if you know a bridge has a structural quirk in its blueprints, you don't go parking a fleet of heavy commercial trucks on it.
That is exactly the physics of what is happening in the dog's body. Excess weight drastically worsens the physical mechanical stress on those compromised joints.
Just pushing them harder.
Right. It increases the overall gravitational strain on the entire skeletal frame. So while you cannot change the joint's underlying structure, managing your dog's nutrition and maintaining a consistent exercise routine is literally the most powerful tool you have to mitigate those genetic joint risks.
You are just keeping the heavy trucks off the bridge, so the small structural quirk doesn't have a chance to turn into a catastrophic collapse.
Exactly. It empowers you. You are actively protecting the joint just by measuring their kibble.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered the deep structural weight-bearing chassis. Now I want to move outward. Let's look at the specialized sensory interfaces and the external features that the dog uses to interact with the world, the sensible surface.
Eyes, skin, and ears. The areas where the dog meets the environment.
Let's start with the eyes, because this is where the biology gets really interesting. Two specific conditions stand out. PRA, which stands for progressive retinal atrophy, and cataracts. Now, they both affect vision, but the mechanisms are totally different.
Completely different. So PRA is a hereditary condition. Imagine the retina at the back of the eye as the film in a camera.
Okay.
Its job is to capture the light and send the image to the brain. With PRA, the photoreceptor cells, the tiny rods and cones that make up that film, literally begin to starve and die off over time.
So it's not that the physical structure of the eye is broken. The film is just losing its chemical ability to process the image.
Exactly. It's progressive, meaning it happens gradually, often starting with a loss of night vision.
And what about cataracts?
Cataracts, on the other hand, involve a physical clouding of the lens of the eye. The lens is normally crystal clear, focusing the light. But with cataracts, proteins in the lens begin to break down and clump together, creating this cloudy, opaque barrier.
And is that genetic too?
It can be related to genetics, but it's also frequently just associated with the natural aging process.
And as the observant owner, the radar we are watching here includes visible cloudiness in the eyes, of course, but also behavioral cues. It's heartbreaking, but you have to watch if your dog suddenly has difficulty navigating familiar spaces.
Right.
Like if they bump into the edge of the coffee table, they've walked around seamlessly for 5 years, especially when the lights are dim.
And I want to stress this. So any apparent difficulty with vision or any change in the appearance of the eye is an immediate prompt for a vet evaluation. You never want to self-diagnose eye issues because the window for intervention can sometimes be quite small.
Good to know. So moving from the eyes to the skin, there's a condition called ichthyosis.
Yes.
It's a hereditary condition that affects the skin's outer layer. The mechanism here is a genetic mutation that prevents the outer layer of skin from forming properly, leading to intense flaking.
Right, it's very distinct.
You'd be watching for a sort of severe dandruff, noticeable texture changes in their coat, or just general discomfort. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. We move from the skin Right back to those ears we talked about at the top of the show.
Ah, yes, the biological greenhouses.
We engineered them for peak cuteness, the signature floppy ears.
Yeah.
But the very shape of those ears creates a warmer, less ventilated environment. It's a dark, moist microclimate strapped to their head.
It is the absolute perfect environment for yeast and bacteria to proliferate. If we look at the broader context of veterinary science, breed-specific traits almost always come with biological trade-offs.
Makes sense.
We breed for a certain aesthetic, a heavy floppy ear, a specific dense coat, a certain large size, and nature always balances the ledger.
Which means they're highly prone to ear infections.
Yeah.
You have to watch for persistent scratching, relentless head shaking, a funky odor, redness, or any visible discharge.
And this is where empowerment comes into play again. Any persistent changes in the skin or the ears require a professional vet visit.
No home remedies.
This is really not the time for DIY guesswork, apple cider vinegar concoctions, or internet remedies, because the underlying cause in that ear could be bacterial, it could be fungal, or it could be an allergic reaction.
Right.
The treatments for those three things are vastly different, and guessing wrong just prolongs the dog's suffering.
Okay, you know what makes keeping those heavy trucks off the bridge incredibly difficult?
What's that?
When the dog's internal engine starts fighting against you. We've mapped out the external issues, the flaky skin, the cloudy eyes, the itchy ears. Now we have to look deeper at the invisible internal systems that regulate the dog's overall vitality.
The endocrine system and cellular health.
Let's talk about hypothyroidism first. This happens when the thyroid gland simply isn't producing adequate hormone levels. And it happens with a statistically increased frequency in golden retrievers.
It does. The thyroid is essentially the master regulator of the body's metabolism. It dictates how efficiently cells use energy.
So if it drops,
Right. When that hormone production drops, everything in the dog system slows down. The engine is basically running on low power.
so you watch for a sudden drop in energy levels, unexpected weight gain even if you haven't changed their diet, or a poor thinning coat. But before we dig too deeply into monitoring those symptoms, we have to address the C word carefully: cancer.
Yes. This is a critical reality of the breed, and it has to be handled directly. Golden Retrievers have a well-recognized, statistically increased predisposition to certain types of cancer compared to dogs overall.
Like what kinds?
Things like hemangiosarcoma or lymphoma, it is an undeniable aspect of their genetic health profile.
But reverting right back to our very first point, the weather forecast. This does not mean every golden retriever will develop cancer. It just means proactive veterinary care is incredibly valuable.
Exactly.
We are watching the radar for new lumps under the skin or unexplained systemic changes in behavior, appetite, or energy. But honestly, this brings up a massive, highly practical question for anyone listening. The warning signs for these internal issues: a drop in energy, a change in weight, a shift in appetite. Those are incredibly, maddeningly vague.
They really are.
A drop in energy could mean your dog is developing a thyroid issue. It could mean they have early-stage cancer. Or it could literally just mean the dog had a lazy weekend because it was raining outside, or their stomach is upset because I switched brands of peanut butter.
Very true.
So how do you know when to actually call the vet without becoming a paranoid hypochondriac every time your dog takes an extra nap on a Tuesday?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact dilemma every single caring pet owner faces. You desperately don't want to overreact to every little yawn, but you are terrified of underreacting to something serious.
Exactly.
To solve this, you need to rely on what the medical field considers the golden rule of observation, the rule of persistence.
The rule of persistence. Unpack that for me.
Dogs have normal day-to-day physiological fluctuations just like humans do. A lazy Sunday is totally normal. Skipping a single meal because it's unusually hot outside might be normal. But when these changes last more than a day or two, or they seem significantly out of character for your specific dog, they cross a threshold.
Wait, hold on. A sluggish 48 to 72 hours. If my dog is deeply lethargic for 2 whole days, my instinct as an owner is to rush to the emergency clinic at hour 24. Is the framework really telling me to just wait it out?
Well, it's a matter of severity versus subtlety. If your dog collapses or is in acute vocal pain or is profusely vomiting, yes, you go to the emergency room immediately.
Right, common sense.
But we are talking about those vague, subtle shifts, a slightly lowered appetite, a little less enthusiasm for the morning walk. The body needs a small window of time to reveal whether this is a temporary environmental blip, like reacting to that new peanut butter, or a true biological pattern. The timeline is the trigger.
So the transition from normal daily variation to a persistent pattern that requires a vet evaluation usually takes a couple of days of observation.
It's exactly.
You aren't panicking over a single sluggish afternoon. You are noting a sluggish 48 to 72 hours, and then you are taking measured action. That actually removes a lot of the paranoia from the equation.
It does. You are giving the data time to form a trend, and once it's a trend, you call the professionals.
That is such a relief to hear. So we've diagnosed the map of potential risks. We understand the structural quirks of the joints, the sensory trade-offs of their beautiful aesthetic, and the vulnerabilities of their internal engine.
Yeah.
Now let's build the toolkit. How do you practically apply all this knowledge? We need a proactive playbook.
And that playbook starts long before you even bring a puppy home with responsible breeding.
Right. Responsible breeders conduct rigorous health screenings on their dogs for things like hip and elbow dysplasia, PRA, and specific genetic markers. By choosing a puppy from health-screened parents, you are dramatically reducing the risk of these hereditary conditions right out of the gate.
But there is a crucial caveat here. Screening reduces risk. It does not eliminate it entirely.
Because genetics are wild.
Biology is infinitely complex, and spontaneous mutations happen. Two perfectly healthy parents can still produce a puppy with a predisposition, which is why the second tool in the playbook is non-negotiable routine vet care.
Which feels obvious, but the underlying reason why it's essential is key. Vets can catch the early signs of these conditions long before they become noticeable to even the most observant owner at home.
Exactly.
They can feel the slight abnormality in the hip joint or see the very beginning of a cataract during an annual exam. Early detection means better outcomes because you have more intervention options on the table.
And to manage this lifelong observation, you need organization. There are tools designed specifically for this, like Vital Pet.
Yeah, that's essentially an organizational companion for pet owners. It's an app where you can record vet visits, track those vital health screenings, log daily medications, and keep the dog's entire lifelong medical history in one easily accessible place.
Which is incredibly helpful.
Right, so when you do notice a persistent change, you have the data ready to show the vet.
Though it is explicitly noted, and this is vital for any pet owner, to remember an app never, ever replaces the personalized guidance of a licensed veterinarian.
Oh, for sure.
It is purely an administrative tool, not a diagnostic one. It organizes your observations. It doesn't interpret them.
So what does this all mean? We started today by talking about how overwhelming and terrifying medical information can be when you first start Googling.
That's a lot.
But looking at this playbook, choosing a responsible breeder, committing to routine checkups, keeping your paperwork and observations organized, and just paying attention to persistent multi-day changes. It seems like the ultimate power move for a pet owner isn't having a veterinary degree at all. It's just being highly organized and deeply observant.
I couldn't agree more. Knowledge of the breed's biology, responsible breeding choices, routine monitoring, and consistent preventive care. Those four things are the absolute best armor you have against genetic risk. You don't need to be a doctor to protect your dog. You just need to be an attentive, rational partner to them.
Okay, let's bring this all home. We've gone on quite a journey today. We started by completely reframing what genetic predisposition really means. It's a weather forecast, a likelihood, not a doomed destiny.
Right.
We looked at the mechanical realities of hip and elbow dysplasia, learning how the joints fail to glide, and discovering that keeping the heavy trucks off the bridge by preventing obesity is our greatest defense.
We explored the sensory vulnerabilities, diving into the cellular mechanics of hereditary eye conditions, skin flaking, and the biological trade-offs of the microclimate inside their floppy ears.
We navigated the internal risks, shedding light on the metabolic engine of the thyroid and the statistical realities of cancer. Most importantly, we learned how to use the rule of persistence to monitor our dog's vague symptoms without losing our minds to daily paranoia.
A very useful tool.
And finally, we packed our toolkit with actionable organizational strategies. You now hold a real shortcut to navigating canine health. You can approach your golden retriever's life not with fear or anxiety, but with an empowered, watchful eye.
You know exactly what biological mechanisms to look for and exactly when to call the professionals.
But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. We've just spent this entire deep dive outlining how tracking minor, persistent physical changes, strictly managing daily weight to protect joints, and deeply understanding our genetic predispositions can dramatically extend a dog's health span and quality of life.
Yes.
The science is absolutely clear. that this proactive, highly observant framework works wonders for our pets.
It undeniably does.
So it makes me wonder if we are willing to be this diligent, this proactive, and this perfectly attuned to preventative care for our golden retrievers, shouldn't we be asking ourselves if we apply this exact same gold standard framework to our own human healthcare routines? Are we watching our own radar?
That is a very humbling question to end on.
Just a little something to think about while you're taking your dog for their highly monitored, joint-protecting evening walk. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We always love unpacking this incredible science with you, and we'll catch you on the next one.